The tradition of Festivus begins with the airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people. Now, you're gonna hear about it.
Hey guys, welcome to the video. Thank you guys for stopping by. So I really wanted to talk about the state of Elder Scrolls Legends right now and just kind of all the gripes that I have with it. I'm sure that some of you guys noticed, and I won't get too much into it, but I pretty much took a 3.5 week break, and the reason for that is just I was feeling so trapped by the meta in this game that I had to take a step back and I had to just step away from it. And now that I've had some time to reflect, I really want to just discuss what's going on with the game and why I think that without updates it's looking grim, you know? And I get that this video might attract some people who aren't Legends fans just from the title and the thumbnail and whatever. You know, if you're not a Legends fan and you stumbled across this video, please don't take any of this stuff that I'm going to be ranting about in the most negative way possible, because I still love Legends. I think that it's a fantastic game. It's honestly one of my favorite games of all time. I've got like near 500 hours on it on Steam, so I just really love this game, and that's the reason that I'm kind of being critical of it right now, is because I want to see it do better in the future. But with that out of the way, I think the biggest thing for me right now is that, and it's one of the most obvious things, but this game has had such a sharp power creep. I mean, it is spiked. And it's so unenjoyable to play against some of these cards that are just top tier difficult things to deal with, where essentially you always have to be running hard removal, or some silence effect, or the same deck to be able to get out of some of the traps that these common decks have. Now, the two decks that irritate me the most, I think, in the modern era are Telvanni and Empire. If you're a Telvanni or Empire enjoyer, that's fine. But some of the things that are just extraordinarily disturbing about those two decks right now are their ability to play overpowered creatures at a increased rate. So you can essentially boost your magic with both of those decks, and it's very hard for your opponent to stop you. You can play in Telvanni. There's a ton of cards that are extraordinarily annoying. You have Devaith's Experiments, Ayleid Guardian, Thorana, Mushroom Tower. Just those layering of Betray effects are crazy. You've got Incano in that deck. You have Ice Storm's kind of just a hard removal. Well, it's not hard removal, it's removal. It's not that bad to play against. But then you have cards like, you have Dark Rebirth, you have Reanimate. You have all these extraordinarily annoying cards to play around, all packed in one spot. You have lethal creatures, you have move creatures, and it's something that I think needs to be looked at, because a lot of the cards that exist within Telvanni are extraordinarily problematic. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say I liked this game more. I liked this game more before it got updated so much. I think that the updates over time have killed this game, and the fact that there has been no consistent balance updates in a long time have really cemented the fact that this is just how the game is now, and we need to deal with it. So what am I talking about? I've been using a lot of vague terms. I've been saying stuff like, this is how the game is, or, you know, the meta's spiked. We have had a problem since about 2019, when the game, on my birthday, by the way, was announced that it was going to stop receiving updates. We had the Jaws of Oblivion update, which it was a good update in some ways. It was horrible in others. because it added the invade mechanic. And it added just in general a lot of cards that I don't like alongside it. So you have cards like Mute, which I've discussed Mute in the past, but it's a completely unprecedented card in the fact that it's so cheap and it provides you a double value for a really, really good effect. So you have cards like Mute that showed up. You got Invade that showed up with Jaws of Oblivion. I could think of a few others, but I'm not really going to linger on that for too long because we all know about the Jaws of Oblivion DLC. Then after that, the game had kind of died off, and didn't take very long for the studio to kind of shut down and say, hey, we're going into maintenance mode. Before they did that, though, they came out with this little thing called the Tamriel Collection. And the Tamriel Collection consisted of around 10 to 14 cards, one per color combination, essentially. And some of you newer players that might have started playing after 2020 might not know about the fact that the Tamriel Collection is a newer thing. But all these cards they're really good for the most part. And I like them a lot, some of them. Others I think are contributors to the downfall of the game. So we had Call Dragon, which is the number one offender for me in the Tamriel Collection, I think. That and A New Era. But Call Dragon essentially allows you to be completely brain dead when you play. It allows you to play a deck full of Greybeard Mentors, which will surely pull more Call Dragons. And you can just pull that card, you can play it, you can upgrade it with Word Wall, and you can have 3 Parthernaks on the board by turn 12 if you've played the deck correctly. It's really, really overpowered, and I really wish that something were done about it. I don't think that simply making a card like that unique is the answer. I know that that's everybody's answer for big cards. Like, if A New Era were unique, it wouldn't be that bad. Or, if Feed were not... Nobody complains about Feed but me. But there are cards like this that have really genuinely hurt the game. As somebody who's stayed around this game since the beta, I kind of know what the game was like back then, guys. And I don't like the way that the game has gone. So anyway, Tamriel Collection. It added those cards. It added Feed, which is a almost completely unprecedented removal card that rewards players for removing. I've said in the past, removal cards, the thing that you're getting rewarded for by playing a removal card is the removal of the creature from the board. You play 5 Magicka for a Piercing Javelin, it kills something, that's your reward. Feed, on the other hand, let's say that your opponent plays a Hand of Dagoth. You play Feed for 6 Magicka, and you can instantly transfer all those keywords onto like one of your own creatures, despite you not having played that card and wanting to get rid of that card. Now you are the proprietor of that card, essentially. It's wrong. It's a steal effect mixed in with removal, and it's completely wrong. I hate Feed. I think that it should be actually removed from the game. We have too many removal effects. That's the same thing, some of you might note, that Jaws of Oblivion introduced with the Oblivion Crisis, or Invasion Crisis, or whatever that card is called, where you destroy a creature unconditionally, and you gain an invasion. That's also wrong. You should not be rewarding players for stuff like that, especially when there's cards that boost invasion. So if you have a... I always forget the names of cards, guys. You're going to have to forgive me, but the guy that will double invade. If you have that guy out, you get 2 invades off for a 6 cost, and you're completely destroying an enemy's creature. That could be a Alduin that somebody played for a very high cost, and you're just removing it entirely and rewarding yourself for it on top of the reward that Alduin is gone. Completely broken card. And then we come to Midnight Burial. And Midnight Burial is really where a lot of the problems start to culminate. Midnight Burial, I think, never should have been released, never should have been printed. it's a complete mess. So Midnight Burial, for those of you who don't know, it allows you to take a copy of a creature from your deck. You get to choose. And this creature will go into the deck. Into the discard pile, excuse me. This creature will go into the discard pile as a copy of itself. So now if you had a Galen the Shelterer in your deck, you now have 2. And that's kind of weird, right? Because that's a unique card. But now you have 2 of them. Okay, that's fine. They're in your discard pile, I guess, so you don't necessarily have them in your hand or in your deck. But it's kind of weird that they would just allow you to duplicate unique creatures like that, but that's fine. It's not like unique creatures are balanced around the fact that they're unique, right? So, you Midnight Burial in, and nobody would Midnight Burial in. Galen, the most common thing that you see people do is they do an Alduin and a Paarthurnax. Some people do double Alduin to try to get the Mimi kind of lockdown going. Some people do double Paarthurnax. I've seen people do Ayleid Guardian, which we'll touch on Ayleid Guardian in a second. But, oh my god. Midnight Burial is so disgusting. So you put a Paarthurnax in your discard pile, and then you can pull it out on turn 9 with Reanimate. So Reanimate, it allows you to summon a creature from your discard pile. Summoning is not the same as putting into your hand, as some of you might note. If you, let's say that you kill your Paarthurnax and then you use Soul Tear to get it out of your discard pile. Okay, it's back in your hand now, and if you're playing a regular game where you haven't boosted your Magicka, now you have to wait a turn to play your Paarthurnax. Midnight Burial allows you to insta-play a Paarthurnax or an Alduin on turn 9 by summoning it from your discard pile for a cheaper cost. That's a little broken. And you might be saying, well, there are cards to counter this. You could play something like Piercing Twilight to remove it from the discard pile, or banish effects. Yes, you could do that. I agree with you. But that's putting a lot of blame on the person who is being played against in this situation. That's basically saying, well, why didn't you prepare for this? Why didn't you put a banish effect in your deck? You didn't see this coming? It's almost like victim blaming, in a sense. And I think it's kind of funny to use that term. But, my god, the amount of people that I've seen say that, oh, well, you should just play this way next time. Sometimes you just can't. You're trying to play your own deck, and it's impossible. And I think the deck is flooded, and I think that the game is flooded with decks like this right now. You just have to look for them. So, Midnight Burial feed, we discussed those. Then Call Dragon, okay. This all culminates in the card A New Era. A New Era is a form of large-scale removal, a board wipe, basically. Now, if we were to look at Legends history, at how many board wipes there have been, board wipe cards, I would argue there's about 3, maybe 4, that are actually viable board wipes. So you have the Red Year, which is a unique 10 cost card. Then you have Soul Burst, which banishes one creature, then deals 3 damage to every other creature on board. You have Ice Storm, which is not really a great board wipe as the game goes on, but it does essentially do the same thing that Soul Burst does, but a little bit worse, but for a more effective cost. Deals 3 damage to every creature that's on the board. Then you have Immolating Blast, which is almost a complete board wipe. It's kind of a little bit RNG, but it destroys every creature on both sides save 1. So, Immolating Blast, Ice Storm. I think I'm forgetting one. It's Burn and Pillage is one, I believe. But nobody ever uses that. So, those are your board wipes. The only one that comes close to matching with A New Era is the Red Year. The Red Year deals 10 damage to every creature on the board. It will wipe your board state as well as your opponent's. If we look at Soul Burst deals damage, Ice Storm deals damage, okay. Everything that we mentioned deals damage or destroys in some sense. Then we go to A New Era. And A New Era breaks the convention of board wipes, where not only does your opponent remove everything from the board, they actually get to keep all of it now. It gets shuffled right back into their deck. It skips the discard pile entirely. If you played the red year, it was a gamble. It was basically saying, hey, I need to make sure that there are as few creatures of mine on the board as possible when I play this. That way, I don't have to have a bunch of crap thrown in my discard pile that I wanted to play otherwise. A New Era throws all of that out the window. Your opponent could be ahead of you by 20 Magicka. Your opponent could be ahead of you with a crazy board state. Your opponent could have Devaith Fear. Your opponent could have Devaith Fear and a few of his daughters out on board, with, Ancano, if we're thinking intelligence, I don't know, and Thorana. Like 4 unique creatures that all cost upwards of 5 to 8 to 11. And you play one card, a New Era, and not only do you get to keep all of the stuff that you originally had in your deck, you get to steal the rest of it back into your deck. That is so incredibly broken. It's a cool effect. I'll give you that. It feels cool when you play it. But man, does that suck to have played against you. It is one of the worst feeling things I've ever played against in a video game. Whenever somebody steals something from you in a game, it feels bad, right? This is essentially an endgame card that can save you entirely by stealing everything that your opponent has worked towards. It feels very unfair. There's not even a chance for them to get it back, because in order to steal something from your opponent, you basically have to be playing willpower or intelligence. So in the matchup against Empire, that has access to a New Era, it's pretty broken. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that a New Era is not unique. You can run 3 of them. So in the modern meta, we have all these cards from the Tamriel Collection. You've got Feed, you've got Midnight Burial, you've got Call Dragon, and you've got a New Era. And these cards all fit into Empire. Okay, Empire already had a lot of removal, but now it has a better version of removal with Feed. Empire can now do Paarthurnax loops so efficiently with Midnight Burial and Word Walls and throwing dragons into the discard pile to pull them out with Reanimate, and then you can Soul Tear, and you've got other Paarthurnax that can be generated. It's wild. And then if anything goes wrong for you throughout the whole match, well, all that you do is you wait to play a New Era. And so that is one thing that has been really, really bothering me for a while that I've wanted to talk about. But then it gets worse because we move on to post Tamriel Collection. And there is something to talk about after the Tamriel Collection. So, and the other cards in the collection, by the way, I'm mostly fine with them. I think that they're all okay. The Spellwright is kind of a fun card. I have a video talking about that. I actually really like the Enchanted Ring. I think that's a fun card. But there's a few that have just gone too far. And so then that brings us to maybe my least favorite card in the game, and that is Ayleid Guardians. So, after the Tamriel Collection was released, there were still monthly cards coming out. If you don't know what a monthly card is, in competitive, at the end of the month, if you are at rank 5 or higher, then you are awarded with a card. It might even be if you're in rank 9, you get 1 card. I'm not totally sure. But if you are at a certain threshold in ranked, you are awarded with monthly cards. And these monthly cards were a new thing that would come out every once in a while. And they would bring something kind of fresh or fun or some new effect. And I'm telling you, almost every monthly card that came out after the Tamriel Collection was so broken. Okay, so we had the Headless Zombie come out. Headless Zombie is crazy. It allows you to get anything back from the discard pile that you want. Originally, there were plenty of ways to get creatures out of the discard pile, but actions, that was pretty much impossible unless you had Queen Irene, or just Irene. So that was pretty much impossible back then. You could get items out with cards like Salvage or Excavate. You could get a support back from your discard pile, but it was very few and far between. Headless Zombie basically says, okay, well, if you play Call Dragon, then you can just get it right back. Because Headless Zombie's effect is that it consumes something from your discard pile, and then it has a last gasp effect of when that creature, the Headless Zombie, dies, it shuffles that card back into your hand. So you can just essentially be a complete degenerate with these overpowered cards that have been added and continue getting them back. Now, the only thing with Headless Zombie is that it is a sorcerer card, so it doesn't fit into Empire. However, it does fit into Telvanni, which is our next problem child. So yeah, we had like Headless Zombie, we had Rim Purveyor, we had the Supreme Dragon. I hate that card. Oh my god, it's so annoying. But then we got Ayleid Guardian eventually. I think it was either the first one or the second one. I think it might have gone Rim Purveyor, then Ayleid Guardian, or Ayleid Guardian, Rim Purveyor. I'm kind of just riffing here. I'm not looking up anything right now. I just had to kind of vent my frustrations about the game so people knew my mindset going forward about this. But so we get Ayleid Guardians, and Ayleid Guardians, the closest thing that you can compare Ayleid Guardians to is Golden Saint, in my opinion. And Golden Saint I love. I think it's a really good card. Golden Saint is it's a 4/4 for 6, I believe. And what Golden Saint does is, if you have more health than your opponent, Golden Saint will duplicate itself. So there will be one in the field lane and then one in the shadow lane. Whenever it duplicates, it shuffles the other one into the opposite lane. So Golden Saint is a card, by the way, that has gone through a few reworks, I believe. Because I remember playing back during the beta, and I think that Golden Saint used to be a 5/5, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to verify that. But Golden Saint has always been a good card. And I would argue that today it's still a good card, but because of the power creep that we've had with these cards from the Tamriel Collection being added and whatnot, and the monthly cards and everything like that, it has dramatically gone down in its effectiveness. And so, Ayleid Guardian then, well, let me backtrack. Golden Saint is a guard. So it provides a 4/4 guard in each lane. For a 6 cost, conditionally, if you have more health, then this will happen. It's an if-then statement. There's a lot of cards that are if-then statements. Corner Club Gambler. If you discard a card and survive till the next turn, then you will draw 2 more cards. A lot of cards are if-thens. It's a common philosophical thing that we talk about, an if-then statement. I mentioned my bachelor's in history. I do have a minor in philosophy as well, so I kind of like to phrase it like that. But when you look at Ayleid Guardian, there is no if-then. It is not what I would call conditional. It is simply the way that it is. So if we're looking critically at Ayleid Guardian then, Ayleid Guardian is a scout card. It costs 11, and it's an 8/8 guard. Okay? Scout is all about having big creatures. That's kind of their end game. They ramp, right? So you look at ramp scout decks, they're very popular. Essentially, what you're supposed to do is just play cards that buff your magicka. That way you can play cards like Ayleid Guardian earlier. So Ayleid Guardian being an 11 cost is really completely inconsequential to the effect of the card itself. Because you could play 3 Tree Minders and, look at that. You can get an Ayleid Guardian on turn 8. So now you're playing an 8/8 for 8 that has guard. Not only is that bad, but unconditionally. So this is just a part of the card. When you play this card, it duplicates itself in the other lane, like Golden Saint does. Now, how is that possible? Golden Saint, a card that costs 5 less, is conditional and worse than Ayleid Guardian. In almost any deck that you're playing, Golden Saint is now a worse option to put in than Ayleid Guardian if you are able to put Scout in instead of Willpower. And if you're playing a Willpower Scout deck, we call that Empire. So, Ayleid Guardian is crazy. If you put Ayleid Guardian into, let's say, Telvanni, then you start getting really big issues. So, Ayleid Guardian, again, Telvanni can buff their Magicka. They have the same access to Scout. Telvanni is just Scout with intelligence creatures. And you play a Ayleid Guardian. Okay. Sounds good. You've got 1 on the board. Now you have 2 because it duplicates itself. So you've got 2 8/8s. This 8/8 card is also immune to lethal. So not only have you split the lanes with 2 extraordinarily dangerous creatures, they are also immune to things like Territorial Viper. Sanctuary Pet is not useful against them in the slightest. Brotherhood Assassins, anything that you throw at these things with lethal that traditionally would have been good to use against large creatures is now not. And it's not like a Hulking Scalon that doesn't have guard. Hulking Scalon at least doesn't block the lane, right? These cards do. These cards do block the lane. And they make it impossible to get through unless you have a creature or creatures that can match up to 8 damage to destroy one. Or you have to have 2 sources of hard removal in your hand to counter 1 card. Most cards in the game can be countered by 1 card. This is what makes Invade such a problem, by the way. Because not only, whenever your opponent plays a card, they're generating a new card with the Invasion Portal, but they are generating increasingly threatening cards with their Invasion Portal. So, long story short, Ayleid Guardian is a problem in and of itself. It's a problem in the colors that it's in. But then you can also be a complete degenerate with it with the other cards that we talked about. So if you have Midnight Burial in your deck, you put Ayleid Guardians in and you can pull them out 2 turns sooner than they originally would have. Now we've already talked about the fact that that doesn't really matter because Scout decks are generally trying to ramp already, but it's still completely annoying. And so now you've got all these Ayleid Guardians, and you can just play Dark Rebirth on one of them, and you'll get more, right? You'll get 2 more, because you'll generate a new one, and then that new Ayleid Guardian will generate a new one. And this is something, this card, is something that immediately, when I was a younger man, and I was playing this game, I think I was 19 during this, I was super excited because I wasn't super invested in the meta or anything, and I didn't realize, like, I was just excited to see the fact that the Ayleid Guardians from that Oblivion quest were in the game, because all that I cared about was the lore implications back then. So I was super excited when I saw this card, but it's something that, as someone with way more game experience now than I had back during the jaws of Oblivion DLC around that time, I am very surprised that this card was allowed to be printed. It's so oppressive. It takes so many resources for your opponent to deal with just one of them, let alone 2. And I think it's been completely overtuned. And then when you put it in decks like Telvanni that have access to Dark Rebirth, that have access to Doppelganger, that have access to Headless Zombie so you can bring them back over and over, have access to Thorana to keep the chain going, Necromancer's Amulet, so that way no matter how many of your Ayleid Guardians die, you'll always be fine. And then if you want to swap over to Empire, you can also do that, and you can just play with Feed, and you can play with the Call Dragon loops over there, and I just think that the meta is so stale right now, and this is essentially what everybody's doing. And I know that I kind of explained this in a very roundabout way, so I'm sorry if some of my explanation didn't quite make sense, but I I took it there the best way that my brain could. This game has such a high potential to be extraordinarily fun. And I don't want this video to sound like I'm coming across as somebody who is simply complaining about the way that other people play. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm whining because I'm losing matches. It's just that I can't bring myself to continue playing against cards and decks that are so unfair and unbalanced to play against that it makes me want to uninstall the game. And that's the major problem here. It's not that Invade killed the game. It's that this power creep killed the game. And it's gotten worse since the game ended. Tamriel Collection has been unchecked. There have been no balance patches since then. Ayleid Guardian has reigned unchecked. Supreme Dragon, which I'm not even going to talk about because I don't like it. Headless Zombie, unchecked. All these cards, all these problematic issues that have been introduced into the game, completely unchecked. It's not unheard of, by the way, for this game to change cards. For those of you that may have showed up after the Tamriel Collection, cards have gone through reworks before. It's not uncommon. Just take a look at Manticora. Go Google Manticora rework Elder Scrolls Legends. You'll find it somewhere. That card went through so many changes. A great example of a changed card is the Indoril Mastermind. That card used to be sort of like a Merchant's Camel, where it drew 2 cards, and then you got to choose one, and then you would discard the other one. People decided that that was too unbalanced. Can you imagine Indoril Mastermind being unbalanced today? That would fit right in with some of the crap that we've got going on now. Disciple of Namira. That card used to give you a card immediately when a creature in your lane died, so you could do insane loops with your entire deck. There was this whole deck built around that card, where you would stuff the Thieves Guild fence in there that would discount your creatures, and then you could just continually kill creatures against the wall with a Necromancer's Amulet, gaining a bunch of health until you got your Journey to Sovngarde on like turn 5. It was insane. Anyway, this is a problem, and I don't see a reason that it can't be fixed. If I were a game developer, first off, I never would have put Ayleid Guardian in the game. The fact that it's not unique is a big issue. I think making it unique would make it better, and I would remove the immune to lethal, but if it has to stay there, I would make it so that way it cannot be targeted by actions by yourself. So I would make it so you, as the player who played it, cannot play Dark Rebirth on it. Now, does that save it from everything? No. Maybe you could add an addendum, as in it cannot be copied, or when Ayleid Guardian dies, it is banished from the game. If you want to have overpowered creatures in the game, that's okay. Just make sure that they cannot be continually pulled out, because that's the reason that we have the unique tag on cards. Only 1 per deck, right? But then you have cards like Paarthurnax getting looped. So I would make it so that way Call Dragon cannot pull Paarthurnax. I would make it so it can't pull unique legendaries, to be honest with you. I would just make that card so that way you can pull regular dragons. Does that make it as enjoyable to play? No. But it makes it more balanced to play against, because you should not be able to put a normal card in your deck that boosts all other shouts in your deck, by the way, that can also start pulling legendary creatures, because that breaks the convention of what unique means. Feed should be stripped entirely from the game. We already have too much hard removal. Yellow's doing fine. Okay? Willpower has quite enough ways to remove your creatures. Feed does not need to exist. And this is something that Legends has never done, but I would be totally fine with just hard deleting that card. The game was better without it. Midnight Burial, that's the same situation. You could put a tag on there, make it so that way you can't put unique creatures in the discard pile, or anything put in the discard pile is stuck in there for 5 turns or something. I don't know exactly how to fix Midnight Burial. It's another card I would just straight up remove, because I remember a time when it wasn't in the game and life was better. And I'm sorry to some of you that play these kind of decks, I know that you're going to be unhappy with what I have to say about it, but I just think that there's more creative ways to play this game than the way that it's being played now. And when you start to stifle the creativity of players, that's when a game really dies. Because you can only play Call of Duty, for example, with the same gun for so many hours, right? You need to have variety. That's why Call of Duty does new guns that come out. You know, do you guys remember Black Ops 3? They had all those weapons that came out in the crates. That was to retain the player base. And right now, I'm not feeling extraordinarily retained with Legends. I like the game still. I think that it's a good game, but I really just fell into this creative rut where I was trying to play fun stuff, and granted, I do play competitive in my videos, and so maybe I should swap over to casual, but the queue times are a lot worse. But it's just like, I always try to point out and praise when people are doing something creative or new. And you can look on my backlog of videos. I bet you in every single one I either played against someone doing Invade, which I'm not even going to really discuss Invade, but I either played against somebody doing Invade or somebody doing Call Dragon, Parthenax Loop, Ayleid Guardian garbage. In most of my videos, I'd imagine you can find something like that. And it's possible to triumph over those. You just have to play extraordinarily conservatively when you see that your opponent is playing like a dick. So, I don't really have any better way to put it than that. But, man, I just wish that people would change. You just have to have some willpower about you and not play cards that are overly tuned. With that out of the way, I would like to let everybody know that I'm thankful for you guys sticking it through this far. Even if you don't agree with me, that's fine. I'm glad to be a punching bag for everyone to open up discussion on, but this is maybe a problem with me too. I am always someone who, like, I'll see something that's meta, right? And in my mind, meta just is another word for overpowered, I think. And one of my buddies pointed this out to me. He was like, you're always trying to find a way to play out of the meta, no matter what game it is. Or playing something good. And I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to playing things that are good. It's just when you have characters in your video game. Now I'm thinking about Overwatch, but like when you have characters in your game that are oppressive, or cards that are oppressive, and cards that are not fun for me to play against, I don't want to play those cards against other people. Because the win at the end of the day is not that important. Okay, we are a small community in Elder Scrolls Legends, and it really is crazy to me how many people insist on being so focused on wins. Wins don't really matter. I got booted down to rank 9 this month because I stopped playing for a little bit. Wins don't really matter, guys. You're not going to win $1 million at the Elder Scrolls Legends tournament, right? If you like to hone your skills, that's fine. I think that it's fun to win. I get a little bit pissed when I lose, I'm not going to lie. I'm sometimes a sore loser. But man, I don't know. Something's got to change with this game. So that's my 2 cents. I'm not going to make any promises about when new videos are going to be coming out because I made a promise in my last video and I did not keep it, and I apologize for that. I should have been more. I should have had more stick-to-itiveness with my follow-through on that, but I have just been so. I don't know. I've been out of it recently with Legends because it's just been hard to get into, and there's been other stuff that I've wanted to play. Work has me kind of exhausted when I come home sometimes, and just had a lot to think about. I've been reading as well. So I've been off doing other things, and I haven't really been a good content creator about it, and I haven't kept you guys informed, really. So I do apologize for that. I hope that you guys can accept my apology, and I hope you don't think that I'm shitting on you if you do play these kind of cards, but man, I don't know. The cards are in the game, right? So it's fine to play with them, but I wish they weren't in the game. So whatever brings you the most joy, I would say follow that. If you like playing Ayleid Guardians, I mean, I can't stop you. I just simply can't. The best that I can do... This is something that I heard from one of my jobs a while ago. I cannot force you to do anything. I can only give you advice and instruct you to do the right thing. It's up to you, though, after you hear that advice, to take the initiative and to animate yourself onto a higher plane of change. So, with that out of the way, I think I'm going to end this rant. I've been talking for quite a while. It didn't feel like it was this long, but man, I guess I had a lot to talk about. So, if you guys stuck it through this far, I appreciate it. It's good to see you guys again, and stay tuned. I do have a video planned coming out soon. So, thank you very much, and talk to you guys soon.
Speaking of climate change, when is Hannibal Buress going to start thinking about some underwear change? Am I right, ladies? Who killed Hannibal? Who killed Hannibal?